I think what people resonate with is like when you're into stuff. So there's like people that pitch stuff to you, and it feels like a used car salesman gimmick. Is like people, nobody cares. Actually, one thing I've noticed is like when I put stuff out there, I tell more of the story behind it because I didn't think people really want to hear it, but actually, especially with this generation, it turns out that people do want to hear it. So it's like what led you to that is as important as what you put out. I mean, if you're putting out crap, nobody cares. But I mean, if you put out something good, but then you tell about the story that led you to that, it really helps. Hi, I'm Dan Henk. I'm a creator of Cosmic Horror series. My latest books are the reissues of my debut novels that I rewrote. It's The Black Season Infinity and Down Highways in Dark. And you can find me at danhenk.com. And you're listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by an amazing artist. Not only is he an incredible tattoo artist, he is an author and an illustrator of his own amazing series of cosmic horror books. We're joined by the ever-talented Dan Henk. How are you doing today?
Done. Awesome, man.
You know, for those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
I have a long, probably boring to everyone but me history. I've been all around the world. I've been lived in like really rough neighborhoods where I get jumped and stabbed and stuff. But I try to like I've always been super into like the whole Lovecraft horror, like kind of like a cosmic horror universe sort of thing. And I put that together. Initially, I wanted to be a comic artist, and then I kind of figured out illustrated books is the way I could best get out my vision, and that's what I'm doing now. My debut novel was The Black Season Infinity, and I put that out, and then I wanted to keep writing, so I started doing all these horror short stories, kind of like a Tales from the Crypt or Twilight Zone or whatever. And but I always kept that like kind of comic book thing where it's like all in one continuity. So they all vaguely relate. Like they can take place in the same universe, And then I couldn't help it. So for the third one, I mean, maybe because I'm a little OCD, but for the third one, I had to bring some of the stuff, the characters in my short stories into my third novel with the character for my first novel. And when I got the rights back to my first two novels, I was like, hey, I'm a way better writer now than I was back in like 2010. So I rewrote them, and right now I'm putting them out, and I'm like, so I'm kind of like debuting my new novels, like my old new novels with like they're rewritten. I include illustrations, and I'm doing an edition that's just a signed and numbered hardcover edition where each one I'll like hand draw a little illustration in them.
That's awesome. I love it here. So your newest book then is your re-release, I should say, is Down Highways in the Dark by Demons Driven. That's a really intricate title there. Tell us about how that came to be, and why is it important for you to get your rights back and to re-release this amazing content?
By the way, the title is so long because it's an Alan Moore quote. I'm a big fan of Alan Moore, and that Swamp Thing series, like the horror Swamp Thing series, and there's one bit where like at the end of it, Abby Arcane like she leaves, but her like the demonic uncles in the background. It says "Down Highways in the Dark," by demons driven. Like it's a longer quote, but it's like that's an awesome fucking quote. So I got to use that for my book. And I did my initial novel, and I remember like I've read tons and tons of books. I grew up on rural army bases, going to the local library, checking out a huge stack of books, having them all read within a week. I'd be like in my room, like with the crack in the door, like past bedtime, like, reading the books, the light in the door. But so I was like, so I know what I want to do. And that kind of evolved from like comic books into eventually I interviewed with DC Comics, and I decided to do books. They wanted superheroes, I didn't want to do superheroes. And so I put it out, but then, I took seminars from Alan Moore and Stephen King and all that stuff. And I was like, dude, I can do a way better story. So it's like, this has always been in my head. So I'll make it way better. So I redid it, add some more illustrations to it, because I mean, you need fucking illustrations,
Oh,
and so I put all that together, and yeah, I'm really excited about it.
is this a heavy illustrated anthology, or is this just something where you're just giving a visual placeholder for each chapter that I think books sorely miss these days?
Yeah, no, it's originally I hear you, and originally I wanted to do like a graphic novel, like because I read Watchmen. After I read Watchmen, I was like, dude, I need to do a graphic novel. But then I realized like all those little like intricate storyboards in between, like them walking down the hall, them opening a door, that didn't really interest me as much as like doing the like dramatic scenes, like one where like a guy punches through another guy's face, and you see his eyeball hanging down, through the hole, and you see his pronounced shock behind him,
Right.
So I was like, that's the stuff that I enjoy drawing. So, stuff like that, I drew and I incorporated into it, and I had kind of like a rough story that would have worked great for a graphic novel, but like, it really helped to like take a bunch of seminars and learn how to like evolve it into like, the kind of stories I like.
Yeah.
Like the kind of like Stephen King grab you things.
It's amazing. Like Stephen King's The Long Walk is finally coming out as a feature film. I read that book a long time ago, and it still freaked me out to this day. Like I reread it, I was just like, I don't know what it is about story pacing, especially in a horror setting. Even though it's not really horror, at least with that particular book, it's more psychological. What's the most misunderstood aspect about cosmic horror that people who don't follow that genre misunderstand?
I think a lot of people they don't really know about cosmic horror, and you have a lot of people like some of their strongest stuff is cosmic horror.
Mm.
Like it was a horrible fucking movie, but the book, The Tommy Knockers, was good.
Yeah.
So like if you look at like the Tommy Knockers, or you look at like Dean Arcus has done it, Richard Matheson has done it. They've all done stuff. So basically, all cosmic horror is like you take a little bit of sci-fi and you make it horror.
Mm.
So it's like a great horror story with like a tinge of sci-fi. And the sci-fi often is kind of like a Lovecraft, like weird fucking creatures and whatever. So it's not like, oh, by the way, we're gonna have like Luke Skywalker with his lightsabers. Not knocking Star Wars. I really like the early Star Wars movies. I mean, they kind of fell off the track afterwards, but the first ones are amazing. These are not them.
How has your personal definition of dark evolved from your early political cartoons for Madcap magazine to your current work?
Everything is kind of fucked up in the universe, so like just life in general is a very rocky road, and like the longer that I've been alive on this planet, the more I see that, like my wife died in a hit and run. I had brain cancer. It's like just all these things, like they kind of interfere with what you got going on, and they can basically they can either defeat you or you can keep going. Like that's my mentality. It's like I have all this stuff, and people are like, "Dude, you're still doing stuff," and it's like, well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna die in obscurity and nobody fucking cares, So yeah, I'm gonna keep trying to do stuff. But yeah, it's when I started, I was like a teenage punk rocker, and I love doing political cartoons that made fun of everybody.
Yeah.
Like when I did Madcap magazine, I remember my first cartoon made fun of the Republicans. Remember they had that contract with America?
Oh yeah.
So I did a cartoon called The Contract on America. So I did like Jesse Helms, like the Minister of Information. He has like a whole Nazi uniform on. And I did Bob Dole, and he's like the enforcer, and he has brass knuckles on. So a lot of people love that. The next one, I make fun of the Democrats, and they're like, "Wait a minute." But I was like the most hated artist, but I also sold the most copies. So so I don't know. It's that like punk rock mentality of like, yeah, there are no like sacred lambs. You can do whatever you want, and I just enjoy them. And I think over time it's proven that like anybody who's like too over the top about anything is usually full of it.
So then, how's your style evolved from your early works in your punk rock days to your most current work with what you're currently putting out for a Kickstarter campaign?
I think that my art's evolved, because when I first started out and like I interviewed with like DC Comics and Paradox Print, and a lot of like indie comics like Malibu is no longer out, and all these other like publishers, and then I was like, I wanted to get myself really polished. So then went to art school, and then went to art school. That taught me a lot. And then I moved to New York, and I remember I interviewed DC Comics, and I interviewed Penguin Books, and like, I didn't want to do mainstream stuff. So I did a lot of stuff, and I put it out, and I really liked what I was doing, like the core element of it. But as time went by, I evolved it more and more. So I was like, if you really polish it and grind it down to its essentials, it really has the highest impact. And that's what I want to do.
So then how is being a tattoo artist and translate to your visual medium? Because I know you primarily work with black and white, but do you add a splash of color into it? Is there something about tattooing on skin versus drawing on a page that just really inspires your creativity?
The nice thing about tattooing is I moved to New York City from DC to make it as a comic artist. And I was like, in the meantime, I had a friend of my brother's who was a tattoo artist. He's like, that guy should tattoo. So he taught me how to tattoo, and I started tattooing. And at first, I was thinking, yeah, I'll just keep at this until I like, make it as a comic artist. But then I really like the community. It's like a very like it's it kind of reminded me of like when I go to like punk rock shows and stuff. Like we have our own community, so it felt like we had our own community. Like we're all freaks together. We're all like into like being individuals, doing our own thing. So I really like that, and like it really encouraged people to be like artists. And when I first started tattooing, this is like in '98, so now it seems like a long time, but I remember it was just breaking out from like that old school thing of like, yeah, you pick something off the wall, you got a little design on you, to like, you could do like big, colorful stuff and like realistic stuff. And I was kind of the quote horror tattoo artist. So, I did a whole bunch of horror. People would even come to me, they'd be like, yeah, I want you to do a portrait, but if you can make her more kind of like the girl from The Exorcist, I'm like, dude, you don't have to pitch it to me. But yeah, no, people would try to bring me horror stuff all the time. So yeah, all I'm saying is it was like a very accepting community, and actually it really helped me like express myself a lot. It did a lot for me. It's like that's where I met my wife, who unfortunately doesn't hit and run, but it did help me with a lot of stuff.
Like you said, you've polished your style in both writing and in art here. You have a Kickstarter campaign coming up more recently. What are you expecting the reaction from your past works to this Kickstarter campaign?
Well, I think the campaign, because it seems like everyone loves my artwork. So I'm like, this is a chance for you to get like, and people love the hardcovers. Like the hardcovers actually look really nice. So I remember back in the day, like I get a ton of books, and I love to get hardcovers, but usually the hardcovers look kind of boring. Like maybe they had like a nice like slip cover over top of it, but these ones actually like I did full on oil painting, so it's like they're wraparound oil paintings, and they're oversized, and I really like that because you can see the illustrations. They're like bigger than comic book size for the illustrations, and a lot of the illustrations I do are like what they call them in the comic medium is splash pages. So they're like full page illustrations. So I'll go, what are the most dramatic scenes? Like one I do like a Stargate, one I do where like a guy's face, like you said earlier, is like crushed in, his eyeballs hanging out and stuff. I one where a guy's like hiding behind a tree and there's like a helicopter coming around and stuff. So I was just like, what are the most grab you dramatic scenes? And when I kind of polish my craft, it's like, how can I make it so that I bring that stuff to life even better? And when it first came out, a lot of people, I think, because at the time I was like a really big name in tattooing, so a lot of people kind of picked up after that. They were like, I mean, I would say this, like they didn't say this, but I would say, yeah, he needs to work in his craft a little bit. But I did, I like I said, I took a lot of seminars. Like the Stephen King one was think it was 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
The Alan Moore one was 6 hours.
Yeah.
But it's like, so I took all these seminars, I went to all these conventions, I, befriended and talked with a bunch of authors. And so I feel like it's really pushed me to the next level. And I'm excited for people to see that. Because I think that a lot of people like first looked at it and they're like, well, needs a little bit of work. And then they walked away. But that was a long time ago. This is a new generation.
Do you have an extensive career as a cover artist? What is it about a cover that you're immediately drawn to when it comes to cosmic horror? Like, there's beauty in horror, I can see that, but what interests you the most when you look at a cover?
I remember back in the day, I guess people don't do that as much anymore, but back in the day, you would buy a book off the cover. Like I'd be like in used bookstores and I'd be like thumbing through books and be like, oh, that's an awesome cover. Let's see what it's about. And unfortunately, the cover was way better than the story sometimes, but not all the times. But when the cover was awesome and the story was awesome, and you're like, that's a great match. So that's what I really wanted to capture. Like I look at like Frank Frazetta when he did all those covers for like, especially for like Kane, who's kind of like a version of Conan, but it's like Cain and Abel. Is the original Kane still around? And Carl Edgar Wagner, I think, put it out. And there were all these covers by Frazetta, and I was like, they are awesome. Like you see those covers, you're like, I got to read that book.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted.
That's awesome. I love it. Your art is featured in nearly every issue of Splatterpunk magazine and key anthologies like Splatterpunk's Not Dead. How did working within that specific intense community influence the stories in Dawn Highways in the Dark?
I was writing a lot of the stories that are in Down Highways in the Dark, and I remember Jack Bantry. That's his author name. He has a person name as well. But I remember Jack Bantry got a hold of me, and he was just putting out Splatterpunk. And at the time, I was like in all the magazines for tattooing, and that's probably how he heard me because he's in the UK. So he asked me if I'd do a cover. I was like, a horror magazine? Of course I do a cover. So I did the first cover. He liked it, and then I just kept doing them all after that. And then he put out like anthologies, and he put out like started a publishing company. He started putting out some books, and then he'd go, "Hey Dan, I was thinking." I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." But yeah, that whole community has helped me a lot because it's like. I run a podcast, so I started interviewing a lot of those people. And then, when I was putting on books, they'd be like beta readers and stuff. So yeah, no, it really helped you get involved with people who do what I consider cool stuff.
And that's what I was going to ask you about. It was your podcast too, because I always love talking with podcast hosts because it's always just, it's a community in itself, but it's like, we're all trying to get the best story or the best information out there. Talk to me about Skull Session podcast as a host. How did that start? And has the discipline of weekly conversations helped you with your creativity?
Well, kind of twofold. The way it started is I did some interviews, and I did a whole bunch of interviews, mainly originally with other tattoo artists, just asking about like, what brought them forward in their career, what worked best for them, all sorts of stuff like that. And then I was like, well, I know all these like musicians and authors. I'll just start interviewing them. So I started interviewing like some of the people that I looked up to, like some of the comic legends, like Walter Simonson. And I was surprised they actually responded to me and they were on my podcast. I was like, this is awesome. And then, you kind of learn about their process and what they went through in life. And like, obviously it humanizes them. It's like, you always look up and go, oh, this guy does these awesome illustrations. I wonder how that came about. And then you talk to him and you're like, you kind of hear like the arc of their story. And I think that really helps. You'd also hear about people's technique, especially with the authors. Like a lot of the artists I already knew because I followed them for so long. But like, some of the authors, I'd be like, hey, do you go for third person or first person? How do you break it down? And so I go through all this stuff with them. And yeah, some of it is like, it's confirmation what you do. Some of it is like a new idea. Some of it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to do that. But it helps you determine what you want to do.
Is there a top three when it comes to people you've interviewed, whether they're in the tattoo or the comic industry or whatever, that we should go back and listen to?
Let's see, I interviewed Steve Bissett, huge inspiration of mine. He did the Swamp Thing run with John Talbot and Alan Moore. And I mean, you can't beat Alan Moore, you know? So I look up, like, whenever I do illustration, a lot of people look at my stuff and they go, oh, well, Bernie Wrightson inspired you, right? I'm like, well, I like Bernie Wrightson, but John Talbot is my single biggest, inspiration. And I remember I was interviewing Stephen, like all the stuff that I always wanted to know growing up, I could ask him. He's like a super nice guy. So we actually, it was originally going to be like a half-hour interview. It turned into an hour and a half. So we did 3 separate episodes, but they were all great, and like he had a lot to say. He's a really cool guy. And I talked to Walter Simonson, who does the Thor. He did like, to me, he did the best run of Thor. So I remember talking with him, and he was a really nice guy. I was like, hey, and I heard about the way that he used to do these like little thumbnails and put them on like a light box and like blow it up, and then he draw, so he kind of captured the energy of those little thumbnails. I was like, hey man, do you still do that? He's like, oh well, now I have a computer, so I can do it digitally. But so we went over all this stuff, and it was great just to talk with him. But I'd say Steve Bissett's really good. Walter Simonson's really good. I interviewed Jeff Strand. He's an author. He's helped me out a lot with a lot of stuff. Like he actually helped me get the rights back, because I remember that publishing companies tend to be like a very mixed bag. So I remember the publishing company, they were asking for like thousands of dollars, all this stuff. He's like, no, you need to tell them this. And I did. And you know what? It worked. I got my rights back right away. So yeah, I love that.
Talk to me about that process, about how that came about. You went to a publishing company. They didn't do anything with it. You finally got your rights back. Like, what's the story on that? Because I'm curious.
So the first people, not the first people to release it, but the first like bigger publisher to release it was Primitive Press. So there was a guy named Wayne Simmons, and he ran he had like a horror convention called Scardiff. It was in Cardiff, but he called it Scardiff. And and he wrote some books that were like Tattoo Jesus and Flu, and he wrote a bunch of like horror books. And I remember he first got a hold of me because he's like, hey, one of the main characters in my book is a tattoo artist. It's like a zombie apocalypse book, but he's like, so I just wanted to pitch it by you to see what you think of the portrayal. And at the time, I was in like a lot of magazines or in the UK, and he was in the UK. So he pitched it by me. I read it. I was like, this is a very, I try to be nice, but I was like, this is a very bad portrayal. Like tattoo artists would never do this, but he listened to me. So, and then he changed his book, and then I was like, by the way, I'm writing a book. So he put me in touch with his agent, with his publisher, and so, Primitive Press, they initially turned me down, which actually they should have, because it was crap. So I rewrote it, took my time, and then they're like, oh yeah. So then they accepted everything I put out. And that was great initially, but then I think they got bought out, or they had a different owner, and they changed the name of their press. So instead of Primitive Press, they were called Post Hill Press. And like, I just felt like they weren't really doing it for me anymore. And I know a lot of other authors had like the same problem with them. And so, I was like, I'll just get my rights back. Initially, I went to Crossroad Press, but then I started my own publishing company. So now I put everything out by myself. It's called Dead Guy LLC, because Dead Guy is my favorite band, so I just named it Dead Guy LLC. But yeah, so I put everything out on my own. But my third book was put out by Crossroad Press, which they have like a horror division called Macabre Press. And I have nothing but good stuff to say about them.
Nice.
But yeah, a lot of people left Primitive, which became Post Hill Press. So and they joined Crossroads. So it's a progression.
It's also one of those things where it's like you get your rights back, you have your freedom back in terms of to do what you want with it, like you have said earlier here. And I love that. You talk a lot about short stories when it comes to your creativity. What techniques have you developed other than learning from Alan Moore and Stephen King that may help a new writer?
One thing that you definitely need to do is do your research. Like I feel like way too many people don't do the research. Like one thing, like I'll tell you two things actually. So one, my dad's military. He's been like every war since the Vietnam War, and I remember we'd watch like I mean, I'm old, so we'd watch like A Team and stuff like that. But you watch like A Team, and they'd have like a 6 round revolver and they shoot like 20 rounds. But that's impossible. It's like they're also like you don't hold a gun like this, you hold a gun like this, and like there's all this stuff that they just got wrong. Like another thing real quick is like if you hold it on like this, you'll be deaf because guns are really loud. But so do your research. Like I remember when I was writing Black Season Infinity, like everything's falling apart and this guy breaks into gas stations. I was like, how do you turn on the pumps? So I remember going to like gas stations and being like, hey man, how do you turn on the pumps? And initially they're kind of awkward, like, why do you want to know? But you need to do your research. Like I did a story on the Loch Ness, and I actually made a trip to Scotland and went to Loch Ness. Unfortunately, I did not see the monster, but I kind of got like a feel for like for the area. There's like an abandoned castle, like on the edge of the Loch. Loch is a word for lake.
Right.
So yeah, I learned a lot of stuff, and I remember I was at like a StokerCon, they had a panel, and like one of the authors was like, yeah, I never do research. I'm like, well, I'll never read your books. So yeah, do your research, and I would say listen to the Stephen King seminar. It's called On Writing. It's available as an audiobook. It's like 7 hours, but it's totally fucking worth it.
When it comes to promotion, obviously you have a Kickstarter, or else you wouldn't be on the show. So I mean that is one thing about having a podcast, because you're always going to you have to self promote. That's the main thing. Talk to us about the Kickstarter campaign. When is it, and what can we expect from the campaign in terms of like the various tiers and all that stuff?
Okay, yeah, no, awesome. So what I have with the Kickstarter, I'm on the pre-launch phase right now. In a couple of weeks, like the actual campaign will kick off, and it's like a 30-day campaign. But because a lot of the stuff I had the rights back to, and then I put it back out myself. I own all the like ebook rights, and the audio books. They gave me a bunch of like trial copies to send out to like test reviewers and stuff like that. So on the campaign, it's like everything from like you could buy like original artwork to art prints to like you could like make a $1 donation, which by the way, any donation helps. Just the numbers help that Kickstarter algorithm. But I'm like, just donate $1 and I'll send you an ebook. And it kind of works in two ways. One, more people support my campaign, but also more people check out my stuff. And I mean, I may be partial, but I think my stuff is awesome. So you should definitely check it out. But yeah, I have like $1 ebooks, and I have like $4 audiobooks, and yeah, check it out. I get a lot of cool stuff on there. Everything from art prints to ebooks, everything.
Oh, that's got to be great for you, especially when you're putting this all together. You have so many amazing books here that we didn't even really touch on. What is it about this community of comic creators that has helped support you throughout your career?
Well, here's the funny thing. It's like I went to art school and I'm used to artists, and then I went into tattooing, and tattooers are a lot more stiff, kind of like this is my field. What do you want? Illustrators I find are not like that. Like illustrators, they'll help you 100%. They go, oh yeah, well I do this. Oh yeah, well I do that. Like even when I went to art school, I'd be like working on stuff, and my art teacher would stop by and be like, what are you working on? Tell me, oh, that's cool. Have you thought about this? So like everything is pitched in a way to like help make you better, not to like tear you down.
Right.
So I found that with auditors too. Like Some of them are kind of socially awkward because we're not all social creatures. I probably more am just because I tattoo for a living, and so you meet people all the time. But usually, once you break that barrier, they're friendly.
Yeah, that's what I found with interviewing people from whether they're indie or professional in the entertainment field itself, comics, TV, film, music, and video games. It's everyone is either an introvert or an extrovert, and
Right.
you sometimes have to straddle that line as a host. Like, I'm an introvert converted to a semi-extrovert is how I word myself. So everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
I kind of got to go with a couple different things. So, as far as drawing, John Talbot, as far as writing, I'd say H.P. Lovecraft. I wouldn't even say he has like the most like fluid prose, but his ideas are amazing. I remember when I first read H.P. Lovecraft. That's the first time, like, as like a little, teenage punk rocker. I was like, the first time I read it, I go, "Wow, this is really something different." This blows my mind. So I say him. I say like there are a lot of bands, but I mean obviously the Sex Pistols. Well, I don't know if I say obviously, but the Sex Pistols blew my mind because nobody sounded like that. They really challenged authority. So they challenged what people thought were the mainstream. So I have different things like as far as tattoo artists. Like Aaron Kane was probably my favorite. Um, I remember I bought some machines for him. Like people should probably look him up because he's like one of those guys where he's kind of famous among tattoo artists, but that's it. But yeah, so I have different sources of inspiration for different things because like nobody's like a jack of all trades. Because like I always say, actually that's one of my biggest problems with like Ink Master is like, well, if you're an Ink Master, you can do everything perfect. It's like, no, you can't. Like you don't go to like a heart surgeon for brain surgery. You go to a specialist.
From a professional standpoint, you have been in many different industries from tattooing to comic books to everything in between, short stories and political cartoons. So, from a professional standpoint, you are successful. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
Uh, well, I mean, I am a little OCD, so it's like I'm not like yeah, I'm fucking amazing, like narcissist over top, But like, I do like that. I do, I can do what I want to do. I can do art for a living. Like I always thought that I'd be an artist when I was a kid. And I know I had a lot of like pushback because like we lived in kind of more conservative areas. I looked super punk rock and like I was just used to a lot of hatred, but I was used to a lot of like trying to do my own thing, no matter what other people said. But yeah, so I kind of forget the question now. but do I consider myself a success? I would like to get out there more, but like I feel like I'm kind of doing I'm more along the lines of what I want to do than not along the lines of what I want to do. Like at least I'm not like packing boxes in a warehouse.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
Um, I kind of feel like I mean this might be a little bit of my OCD or like I'm Norwegian too, so maybe it's a Norwegian thing because like my dad's kind of like this. But it's like if something comes up that's like a roadblock, like I just figure you gotta get past it, keep going. Because like end of the day, if you don't make it, nobody cares except for you. Like a lot of people will be like, "Oh, he has such potential," but it's like it's really you got to make it or break it, So it's like like for instance, when I had brain cancer, I was like I was doing a painting an album cover for the band Shy Load, and then I had brain cancer, and I was like 5 hours from finishing the painting. And I remember calling Matt Fox from Shy Load. I was like, "Dude, I am gonna finish your painting." He's like, "No, man, just get better, just get better." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna finish your painting." So I just feel like I got to get stuff done. So I'm always like trying to get stuff done when stuff comes up. I'm like, all right, how can I work past that?
The younger generation is looking at your various works and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I think what people resonate with is like when you're into stuff. So there's like people that pitch stuff to you, and it feels like a used car salesman gimmick. Is like people, nobody cares. Actually, one thing I've noticed is like when I put stuff out there, I tell more of the story behind it because I didn't think people really wanted to hear it, but actually, especially with this generation, it turns out that people do want to hear it. So it's like what led you to that is as important as what you put out. I mean, if you're putting out crap, nobody cares. But I mean, if you put out something good, but then you tell about the story that led you to that, it really helps.
If your life was a comic book, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
That's hard. I don't know. And the thing is, I've read so many comic books, that I don't know. Like, I don't know. Maybe Preacher, because like I feel like I don't have superpowers. I have the voice of God. It'd be kind of cool if I did, but I don't. But I'm just saying, is like I feel like I've had like a lot of people that are like, nah, you won't make it. Like my super conservative parents were like, that's not a real career. Art's not a living. So all this stuff, I feel like, just like Preacher has to fight through all that stuff. Although with him, it seems more like he's just like trying to survive as opposed to like fight. So, but I would say some of the trials and tribulations there. But then again, I mean, stuff gets a lot more extreme in the comic books. I don't know. If anybody's read any Garthians or Watch the Boys, like stuff gets crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of bands that I like, so I kind of hate to say that it'd be my soundtrack. Like bigger names like Slayer, names that people haven't heard of, like Dead Guy or like Damnation AD. But I would say probably Damnation AD would be like the soundtrack to my life the most, because like some of it like gets really heavy, some of it's kind of like dark and gothic, and like there's an ebb and flow to everything.
Well, Dan, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
All right, well, thanks for having me.
Before I let you go, where can we find you? How can we support you? And when is the Kickstarter campaign?
Well, the Kickstarter campaign, I should really know this. The Kickstarter campaign kicks off in, I think, like a week, 2 weeks. I'm not sure. It's called Down Highways in the Dark. So you can definitely look it up on Kickstarter. I don't think there are any other campaigns named Down Highways in the Dark, but my website is where everything is featured, and it's danhenk.com. It's Dan Henk is HENK.com, and I put everything up there. I'm like a social media nerd, so I have a blog up all the time. So all the links are there.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. You can find the podcast wherever you search, well, wherever you get your podcasts, I should say, at Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO, not the number two, TWO Geeks Talking. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.
Thank you.